Hey friends, today I will take you to one of my most favorite opera houses in the world, the Vienna State Opera. It's actually one of my most cherished memories because I went in on that day with a heartbreak and I came out a healed and changed person ready to move on. So, something about this particular opera and this whole experience healed me during that 5 hours. And today in this video, I'll try to break it down for you how the opera and the experience healed me. So in December last year, 2022, I went to Vienna, to the Vienna State Opera to see Wagner's Die Meistersinger von Nürnberg. And actually, I only spent a few days in Vienna because my main focus of that trip wasn't to go to Vienna, but instead to go to Berlin to see and hear the Berlin Philharmonic play in that great hall. So the Vienna part of the trip was just a pit stop along the way to Berlin. But even though it wasn't my main focus, in the end though, that experience at the Vienna State Opera became the highlight of my trip and changed my life for the better. And actually I took a few videos that night, so let's have a look. Here's the footage from that night, starting from the tour of my opera box, which houses 6 seats in total, and that's my seat right there on the left. You can see that I got to sit in the front in an amazing seat, so I was able to immerse myself fully into the opera without having to be conscious about the people sitting in front of me and blocking my views, as would be the case, in fact, if I were to sit down there somewhere in the stall seat, because I'm quite a petite person. So that night at the Vienna State Opera, everything, the cast, the staging, the costume, the lighting were phenomenal. I got to see the legendary Michael Voller, the gentleman in the blue blazer in the middle, play the role of Hansack that night. And a little bit about our composer, Richard Wagner, the composer of this opera. How to describe him? Well, he's a very influential composer, a giant name in the opera world, and any of you who knows him knows that Die Meistersinger is his longest opera. It's an opera in 3 acts and lasts about 5 hours in total. But this is not a review or an analysis of the opera itself, although I might do that in later videos, who knows. But this video is about how the opera and the experience that night cured my heartbreak. So let's move on. Well, as great an experience as that was, that night I was in a very different state of mind because I just went through quite a heartbreak, and actually I cried for like 7 hours the night before. So on the day I was really tired from all the crying and all the traveling, but I was also very ready to lose myself in this magnificent opera. But I also realized that that's quite a tall order, right? To expect a piece of art to be a total escape from a very heavy thing in your life. But all I wanted really was a break for 5 hours and not to feel anything. But instead, I felt everything. It was not an escape in the way that I expected it at all. Like, it's not the same feeling as when you drink to drown your sorrow. It's not like when you watch a Netflix series, because like if that in that moment you would lose yourself in the series, right? And you'd be totally oblivious to everything that's going on around you. And I wanted that. I went into the opera, I wanted that, but I didn't get it. Instead, during the opera, I felt everything plus acceptance. And I think that's the key, It's like I was wearing I don't know, philosophical glasses that made me very susceptible to everything Wagner, the composer, wanted to convey in that opera. Politics, culture, relationship, life, aging, all those big questions in life. Now, before we get into how it healed me, the Meistersinger, the opera, is regarded as a comedy, but in my opinion, it's also very intellectual. And from that night, I also backed home a lot of philosophical questions to ponder. For example, the role of tradition, who writes the rules, what's the reasons behind writing those rules, how progressive is too progressive, self-deception as a root of chaos, nationalism, and the role of music in the world in general, just to name a few. But again, that's not the focus of this video. In this video, I want to tell you a story about how this opera killed me. Well, first of all, it's natural after a heartbreak not to want to listen to any love songs or see any rom-coms or even hear of a fairy tale love story, right? It's unbearable, and I get that because I was on that same boat that night. And actually, I'll let you in one of my pet peeves about operas in general. As much as I love going to the opera, there's one aspect of it that I kind of feel like I have to force myself to sit through it. And that's when the opera is of a kind that the boy would defy all the rules and get the girls of his dream. Because that's too fairy tale like for me, and I don't think that's how real life is. And it's okay if you go into art and what you expect is to be entertained in that fantastical fairy tale like way. But the way I appreciate art, the way I approach art is for it to reflect real life and act as a kind of mirror for me. So this fairy tale stuff doesn't really cut it for me. And I was really grateful for Wagner that night that he didn't write this opera in that way. That he wrote it in a real and portrays real life, real relationship problem, heartbreak and that type thing. And that's cure number one, actually, to be able to see that play out on the stage. And it's very refreshing to see an opera portray a person, especially the main character, who has everything to offer, to be disappointed in love. It's very refreshing to see that you could be highly successful in all other areas of life and still be inadequate when it comes to love. And that's okay too, because in this way, we learn to see love and feel love in other forms, and we learn to give love instead of waiting around, like trying to receive love. And that's cure number two. The whole time sitting in the opera house, I was also seeing a contrast between a youthful love, which, I don't know, seems very superficial to me. I was maybe like being prejudiced that night, I don't know. But it seems to me that they don't even know what love is. Not that I know what love is, but the caveat is that they are not alone and they have each other. And at the same time, I was also seeing this world-weary, seasoned old man with wisdom. He knows everything, he is successful in all other areas of life, but has no one in a romantic sense. And in that moment, I was compelled to ask myself, which of these two would I want to be? And it's like asking myself, do I want to be in a relationship that seems good today, but I know won't last? That is to be in a fool's paradise. Or do I want to be centered, be in the real world, be proud of what I've accomplished in life, for everything that I've worked for, everything that's really mine, but would come at the expense of having to feel that bitterness of not having anyone to share it with. And I don't know, I didn't even have to think about it. Like, I chose the latter. I chose this one. Because, yes, although it might take longer and I might have to sit through some uncertainties, I know that when the time comes that I will taste happiness, it will be genuine happiness and not happiness in a fool's paradise. And the opera made me realize that I'm willing to wait for that through all the uncertainties. And that's cue number 3. At the beginning of this video, you may remember that I mentioned one of the characters from this opera called Hans Sachs. Hans Sachs was actually a real person. He was a poet, a playwright, and a shoemaker who lived in probably 15th century, if I'm remembering things correctly. So Wagner based one of his characters on him, and Wagner wrote him to be so compellingly human, so psychologically complex and so true. And even outside of the opera world, we connect with a character when it's real and have a story that we can relate to. I'm reminded of a quote that goes something like, we fell in love with the person whose darkness we recognize. I think this is also true in this case as well. And that's one of the things about Wagner that I found out later when I started to study his work more deeply, that Wagner aims to portray human conditions, even the shameful ones, without trying to hide it. And in order to, for us as an audience, that we will feel seen when we experience his work. And in fact, I think I'm reminded of some quote from a book about Wagner. Let me see if I have it on my bookshelf at the back. Oh yeah, that's it. It's this book, Aspects of Wagner by Bryan Magee. In here, there is one description of the psyche of Wagner's work, if you will, that's so true. Basically, it says that people that like Wagner like him because his work make us feel seen and understood for the first time in our lives. And I think that's very powerful and very true. So I'm gonna find a quote in this book and I'll quote it for you guys. So, quote, Wagner's music expresses, as does no other art, repressed and highly charged contents of the psyche. Some people are made to feel by it that they are in touch with the depths of their own personalities for the first time. The feeling is of a wholeness yet unboundedness, like mystical or religious experience. The passionate nature of it, its unwanted depth, explain why it is like being in love. Most important of all, it is the abandoned utterance of what has been in some way forbidden, and thus presents us with the life of feeling that we all, in our heart of hearts, would like to live, but in real world can never live. A life in which our most passionate desires and their expression are unrestrained. it fulfills in art our most heartfelt wishes, which can never be fulfilled in life. And yes, I think the way that Wagner wrote this opera and the magnificent production of it by the Vienna State Opera is the reason why I went into this opera with a heartbreak and came out of it a changed and healed person. It's because during that 5 hours, I felt seen. And it's the same feeling as being loved. And because this opera taught me the truth about love and life, and I came to full acceptance. And I went in loving someone else, a lost cause, and I came out loving myself, and I attached a very important meaning in my life in art that I can relate to instead of on a person. And I think that's the reason why it killed me. And that's how much this experience meant to me. Well, that's it, I think, for today then. I could go on and on and on and on about this opera, 100 times deeper, but I thought it'd be better to just focus on the experience of how it healed me. And actually, for a few months after I went to this opera, I just couldn't stop listening to the prelude to the opera, and I would recommend it to anyone. It's a great start. And also after that night, I started to seriously study Wagner's work, and I went to a few more of his operas. I think I should do videos on that. Yeah. I'm also glad to say that after 6 long years of queuing for the ticket to the Bayreuth Festival, which is a festival dedicated to Wagner's opera only, and the ticket is very difficult to get hold of. The average waiting time can be up to 6 years. And this year I managed to get the ticket to the festival in August and to see Parsifal, which is Wagner's deepest, most matured and complex work. Is his final work, and I know that that's going to be another life-changing experience for me. So I'm going to make a video of that for sure, so stay tuned for my Bayreuth Festival video this summer in August, and I'll see you next time.